You're nothing, Samuel. Not worthy of my family. My daughter deserves a man of real value. I'm Samuel Hayes, 37 years old. For 12 years, I've built my fortune in silence. In Denver, I created a private equity empire by spotting opportunities no one else dared to touch. Every deal hidden, every move disguised. I buried my name behind walls of paper. No one could trace me, not even the sharpest lawyers. That's how I thrived, invisible and untouchable. But tonight, in my father-in-law's kitchen, I felt stripped of every ounce of power. His voice cut sharper than any blade. Robert Kellerman sneered, coffee mug in hand, swinging it like a gavel of judgment. His insults filled the room like smoke. 3 years of this ritual, every dinner, every holiday. Worthless, always that same word. To him, I was nothing more. He boasted that Elena could have married better. Dr. Patterson's son, he reminded her, over and over. But instead, she chose me, the man he despised. You hide behind vague words, Robert spat. He gestured at Elena like she was evidence. She kept her head down, silent, stirring eggs cold on her plate. She wouldn't even meet my eyes. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "He works in finance, Dad." Robert barked a laugh, cruel and sharp. Finance meant nothing to him. He called me a fraud, insurance salesman, retirement clerk, a nobody. He circled the kitchen like a predator, his anger rising with every step. This was Robert Kellerman, self-proclaimed genius, CEO of a company bleeding money for 4 straight years. He lived off his father's fortune, believing it made him untouchable. But I knew the truth about Nexora Labs. 8 months of watching their decline. They were drowning, desperate for a savior, and I was the ghost they needed. "You just sit there," Robert snapped, his finger stabbing toward my chest. "Real men fight back. Real men speak." The room fell still. I looked up slowly. "You're right, Mr. Kellerman." His smug smile faltered just slightly. Even Elena lifted her gaze, startled. For once, Robert was unsure. I rose from my chair, voice steady. "Elena deserves far better than this."
Their eyes followed me as I reached for my jacket. The silence weighed heavier than his insults ever had. I moved toward the door without another word. Her chair scraped across the floor behind me. "Samuel, wait!" Elena pleaded. But the November air already hit my face, cold, sharp, a reminder that everything was about to shift. 5 years earlier, I had first seen Elena. She stood on stage in Boulder, fierce and brilliant. Her passion lit the room brighter than the spotlights. I had come hunting for investments in biotech. Instead, I found her. Our story burned fast, too fast. 18 months later, we stood at the altar. A small wedding she cherished, and Robert loathed with all his pride. He wanted chandeliers and ballrooms. We wanted something real. But Robert never forgave me for that. The cracks began that first Christmas. Too much wine, too many questions. He demanded answers I would never give. I gave him smoke and mirrors, private investments, portfolio work. He wanted blood, and I gave him shadows. That night marked the beginning of war. Robert never trusted me again, and I never forgot his contempt. Now, as the door closed behind me, I felt resolve harden. He thought he was the judge, but soon he would be the defendant, and I would be the executioner of his empire. The game had shifted. He just didn't know it yet. Every word he hurled was fuel, and I had been patient long enough. Elena thought she was caught in the middle, but soon she would see the truth. Her father's empire was a house of cards, and I was the storm already at the door. I didn't need his approval anymore. I needed his downfall. And every step he took toward me, every insult, every sneer, only sealed his fate tighter. The man who called me worthless was about to learn what value truly meant. I had stayed silent for too long. Now silence would be my weapon, and revenge would be my answer. This was no longer about respect. It was about survival.
The words I used were true, but never the full truth. I was the one with the wealth, hidden in plain sight. Amber Lynn Ventures was mine, my creation. 200 million in assets under my control. We targeted medical and tech startups before anyone else noticed. It was risky work, but it made me untouchable. And no one knew. That was my advantage. But Robert mistook silence for weakness. To him, I was a ghost without a future. He mocked the mystery of my work. A real man should be transparent, he said. Elena laughed it off, but never told him to stop. Her silence cut deeper than his words. The insults escalated. He attacked my clothes, my car, my so-called lack of ambition compared to his friends. Doctors, lawyers, men who shouted their success. And Elena shrank smaller every time. The confident woman I married was fading. She apologized for him, but never stood against him. Every dinner ended with promises it would get better. But it never did. It only grew darker. 3 months ago, everything shifted. I uncovered Nexera's secrets buried in plain sight. They were drowning in debt, bleeding money every day. Investors had abandoned them like a sinking ship. Robert's empire was one breath away from collapse, and I held the decision in my hands. Save him or let him burn. The businessman in me saw opportunity. The son-in-law in me saw revenge. I began the process quietly, my name hidden. Robert never suspected a thing. He insulted me while I studied his downfall, and Elena sat between us, silent. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago, Elena's birthday dinner. A night burned into my mind. Robert's house, his stage for humiliation. He invited Harold, the cardiac surgeon. Harold loved to brag about Aspen and boats. That night was no different. Robert toasted Harold's new yacht, a 40-foot beast worth more than most homes. Everyone clapped, even Elena. Then Harold turned to me with a smile. "What about you, Samuel? Any new toys?" I should have known Robert planted the trap. His eyes glimmered, waiting for blood. Robert answered for me with a smirk. "Samuel doesn't play in that league." His tone dripped with fake sympathy. He's practical. Too practical. Elena's hand gripped mine under the table, trembling. A plea for me to stay quiet, to endure. But Robert leaned forward, relentless. "My daughter is brilliant," he announced to the room. Published, respected, admired. She could have married anyone. Instead, she chose him. His finger stabbed toward me, a mistake we all live with. The silence was crushing. Elena's hand went limp in mine. Harold stared down at his cake, avoiding me. No one dared to look up. Robert leaned back with a satisfied grin, waiting for my reaction. I looked at Elena, really looked. Her face burned red, eyes fixed on her lap. Not shame for me, shame for herself, for choosing silence. And that was the moment I decided. This war was no longer about pride. It was about power, and I would win. No more patience, no more restraint. It was time to end Robert's reign. The plan had already begun. He just didn't know it yet. And soon, the man who called me worthless would beg me for salvation, and I would make him crawl for it. Every insult was a debt, and debts always come due. Elena didn't know it. Harold didn't care. But Robert, he was already finished, and the countdown had begun. I just sat there, smiling faintly. For the first time, the silence was mine, and Robert didn't even realize it. The hunter had just become the prey, and I was only getting started. Every empire has a weak point, and I had found his. Now it was only a matter of time. The birthday cake melted untouched. The laughter was hollow, and beneath the surface, war was brewing. Robert thought he'd humiliated me, but what he really did was light the fuse, and when it burned down, he'd be standing on the ashes, his legacy in ruins, and I would be the one holding the match.
Not shame for his behavior, but for being tied to me. Ashamed to be married to the man her father despised. That was the moment I stopped pretending. Nothing was going to heal if the truth stayed buried. Elena would not defend me because she agreed with him. Maybe not fully, but enough to stay quiet. Enough to let him cut me down in front of everyone. Silence is a choice. She made it. And I finally made mine. I set my napkin down and stood. I looked Robert in the eye and did not blink. You are right. She does deserve better. I kissed Elena's forehead and stepped back. Then I reached for my coat. Behind me, she said my name, but I kept walking. I did not turn around. I had work to finish. The drive home was a corridor of clarity. For months I had prepared a lifeline, Nexora Labs, 15 million, a clean save, enough to stabilize the ship and his legacy. The paperwork sat ready, only my signature missing. In my driveway, I let the engine idle. 10 minutes later, the decision hardened. I would not sign. There was a better lesson to teach. He would taste the need he mocked. He would learn the price of contempt. And he would learn it from me, the man he called worthless. At dawn, I called my attorney, James Morrison. I asked for 3 documents: a formal withdrawal of interest, a termination of the pending funding agreement, and a confidentiality release naming me as the investor. "Are you sure, Samuel?" he asked. "You did months of diligence. The numbers work if you ignore the family." "I am sure," I said. "Sometimes the best investment is the pass." By noon, the package was ready. James would deliver the notice at 10 sharp. Plenty of time for panic to bloom and for truth to follow. I wanted the message clear and cold. Mercy is earned, not demanded. That evening, Elena came home at 8. She had been at her sister's since the party. Her eyes told me she had been crying. "We need to talk," she said, and sat down.
"Okay," I said. "Dad called. He thinks he went too far. He wants to apologize. Maybe dinner this weekend. A reset. Just the 3 of us." I searched her face for understanding. She still thought this was about feelings. She did not see the fire her father lit. "Elena," I asked, "how long have you been ashamed of me?" She froze, stunned. "I am not ashamed. You have never told him to stop. Not once, and 3 years. He does not mean it. He is just protective. He called me worthless in front of everyone. You said nothing." Tears filled her eyes. I did not know what to do. He gets angry when people push back. "So you chose his comfort over my dignity?" "That is not fair," she whispered. It was fair, and we both knew it. Every excuse was a vote, and every vote was against us. "I love you," she said. It hurt more to hear it. I know you do. But love without courage breaks. If you will not fight for it, it dies. An hour later, she left. I knew she would not truly return. Even if we tried, something had cracked. Counseling might patch it, but the fracture would remain, because part of her still saw me through his eyes, and I could not live there anymore. The clock moved toward morning. 10 o'clock was coming like a verdict. Some lessons arrive by letterhead, some by silence, and Robert was about to receive both. And for once, he would listen, because markets don't care about pride. They care about numbers and time. And both had run out for him. The man who measured me by volume was about to learn the weight of quiet power. He called me worthless. Tomorrow, he would call me essential. And I would decide what he was worth. To his board, to his employees, to his daughter, and to the man he tried to break. The lesson was coming. Signed and sealed.
Eyes. The next morning, I woke up early and drove to my office. At exactly 10 a.m., I called James to confirm that the withdrawal notice had been delivered to Nexora Labs. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. "Samuel," Elena's voice was shaky. "Something's happened. Dad's company just lost their major investor, $15 million. He's completely falling apart." "I'm sorry to hear that." "The lawyers won't tell him who pulled out. They said it was an anonymous investment group, but now they're claiming breach of confidentiality terms. Dad's talking about bankruptcy." I stayed quiet, listening to her breathing on the other end of the line. "Samuel, I know you work in finance. Could you maybe ask around? See if anyone knows anything about this investment group?" The irony was almost too perfect. She was asking me to help find the investor who could save her father, not knowing that she was talking to him. "I'll see what I can do," I said. After I hung up, I drafted 2 text messages and scheduled them to be sent the following morning. The first would go to Elena. The second would go to Robert. Both would arrive at exactly 10 a.m., along with a third message from James Morrison. By tomorrow afternoon, everyone would know exactly who they'd been dealing with. That evening, I went through the Nexora Labs files one more time. What I found confirmed everything I'd suspected about Robert Kellerman's business acumen. The company had been hemorrhaging money for 18 months, ever since a failed product launch that Robert had insisted on pushing through despite warnings from his research team. He'd overruled his own scientists, convinced that his business instincts were superior to their technical expertise. The resulting disaster had cost Nexora Labs their partnership with 2 major pharmaceutical companies.
Nearly $3 million in development costs. But instead of accepting responsibility, Robert had blamed the research team, fired 3 senior scientists, and started shopping for new investors to bail him out. What made it worse was that Elena had been one of the scientists who'd opposed the launch. She'd written a detailed memo explaining why the product wasn't ready for market, but Robert had dismissed her concerns as typical overcaution from academic researchers. When the launch failed exactly as she'd predicted, he'd made her life so miserable that she'd eventually quit and found work at a smaller firm. Elena had never told me the full story. She'd mentioned that she'd had some disagreements with her father about research priorities, but she'd framed it as a difference of opinion rather than what it really was: Robert's arrogance destroying sound scientific judgment. I called Elena's former colleague, Dr. Patricia Webb, who left Nexora Labs around the same time as Elena. Patricia and I had met at several industry conferences, and she'd always been candid about the challenges of working in biotech. "Patricia, this is Samuel Hayes, Elena's husband. I hope you don't mind me calling." "Samuel? Of course not. How's Elena doing?" "She's fine. I'm actually calling about something else.
I'm researching Nexora Labs for a potential investment, and I wanted to get your perspective on their research capabilities. Patricia was quiet for a moment. Samuel, can I speak freely, please? Robert Kellerman is a disaster. Brilliant scientist, solid research foundation, but the man has no business running a biotech company. He treats his research staff like factory workers and makes decisions based on ego rather than data. Can you give me an example? The neurotropin launch. We had 6 months of
testing that proved the compound was not stable for trials. Elena wrote a 20-page analysis detailing the failure points. Her report spelled out the risks line by line. Robert ignored it and charged ahead anyway. He pushed the launch like pride could bend chemistry. It cost the company nearly $3 million. The FDA rejected the application within days. What happened to Elena after that? He blamed her, said she was negative and disloyal, called her a drag on success. He turned the lab toxic until she had to leave. It broke a good scientist, and it broke trust. I still hate that it happened, Patricia said. Elena is one of the sharpest minds I know. When I hung up, I sat in the dark of my office. Midnight crept in with the weight of it all. Robert had not only humiliated me at dinners, he had gutted Elena's career for telling the truth. She warned him, and he punished her. Arrogance dressed as leadership. That $15 million I prepared, it would not only save his company, it would reward his worst habits. It would validate the myth that he was right even when the evidence screamed otherwise. And it would spare Elena from ever choosing. She could keep peace and avoid truth. But peace without truth is rot. She would have to choose now, and I suspected which way she would turn. Morning came hard and clear. I reviewed the withdrawal package one last time. Everything was tight, every clause precise. James would file the termination at 10 a.m. The clock felt louder than usual. At the same time, my scheduled texts would fire, one to Elena, one to Robert. At 9:45, I called Elena. "Samuel, is everything okay?" "Sit down," I said. "I need to tell you something." "You are scaring me." "I am the anonymous investor who withdrew from Nexora Labs." Silence stretched for 30 seconds. "What are you talking about?" "Amberlin Ventures is my firm. We were prepared to invest $15 million. "No, you manage portfolios. You do not have that kind of money." "I own Amberlin. We manage over $200 million in assets. I had been the investor your father courted for 8 months. Her breath quickened through the line. "This makes no sense." "Check your phone at 10. A text will confirm it. Your father will get the same message." "Why did you not tell me sooner?" "Because I did not need you to know. And I needed to see how your family treated me." "So this was a test?" "It was an investment, until your father called me worthless." "And you stayed silent." Her voice broke. "I should have defended you." "I know that. But this is my father's life. You cannot destroy his company over this. This is not about hurt feelings. It is about respect and consequences." "Please do not do this. We can fix it. I will make him apologize." "It is too late for apologies." At exactly 10, my phone buzzed with delivery confirmations. Elena's phone chimed at the same second. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Samuel, please do not destroy him." "I am not destroying him. I am letting him meet the consequences he wrote. He chose pride over proof. This is the cost, and the cost is due today." Silence answered me. For once, she heard every word. I ended the call and let the clock keep moving. The messages had done what words could not. They cut through denial with proof. Outside my window, Denver kept breathing. Inside,
A dynasty exhaled its last. This was not revenge for sport. It was discipline the market understands. The man who measured me as nothing was about to learn what nothing costs, and how much it takes to buy it back. If he wanted mercy, he would have to earn it. Not with words, with truth, with accountability he never showed. My phone lit up again. Another buzz. This time it was Robert. He finally knew my name. And now he would learn my terms. No insults, no theater, only numbers and consequences. For once, that would be enough. And it would be the lesson he never forgot.
Cruel is 3 years of silence while your husband is torn down. Cruel is watching and never saying a word to stop it. The call ended. 5 minutes later, my phone lit again. This time, it was Robert, already shouting before hello. "You think this is a game? You think you can ruin me? You pulled the money to hurt me!" "Mr. Kellerman, you misunderstand what happened. You misunderstood nothing. Elena told me. You were the investor. You walked away." "That is correct. 23 employees, 23 families, do you get that? You would destroy them because your ego is bruised." "I will let your company rise or fall on its merits, not on my money hiding your mistakes." "We had a deal. You backed out." "We had a draft you hoped I would sign. I chose not to. No laws broken, no contract breached." Silence filled the line. When he spoke again, the rage had thinned. "What do you want?" "Nothing from you. There has to be something. Cash, an apology, a favor. I want you to learn the feeling of need, to need the man you called worthless." I ended the call and powered down my phone. For me, it was done. 3 days later, Elena filed for divorce. She came while I was at work. She packed quietly and left a letter on the counter. 2 pages that said one thing. She could not be married to someone who would hurt her family. She did not mention what came next. She cut her father completely. I learned it from Patricia Webb. Word travels fast in biotech circles. Elena confronted Robert about me, about the lab, about everything. He tried to justify it all. She did not let him. She told him what his choices cost, to the science, to his team, to us. Then she walked away. He called her 17 times. She answered none. Within a week, the rumors hardened into headlines. Nexora's debt. Their investor flight. 2 more funds withdrew, spooked by the ratios and a vanishing lead backer. Robert cut 8 jobs and shuttered a satellite lab. The local business journal ran a piece. The angle was the mystery investor and a faltering strategy.
Robert declined to comment. Former staff did not. They described a company steered by ego over evidence. By month end, the sales signs followed, the house listed, accounts liquidated, everything for runway. The club membership gone, the Vail vacation place gone, all of it converted to time. I drove past one afternoon and saw him in the yard, pulling weeds where a crew once worked. He looked smaller in the daylight, like a man who had finally run out of people to blame. 6 months later, the notice arrived. Nexora Labs filed for bankruptcy. They sold off fragments of research. The company itself was finished. The remaining staff were scattered, absorbed by the buyer or let go. Robert took a consulting role at a larger firm. No corner office, no board votes, just a badge and a calendar of meetings. He worked out of a small rented suite. No framed headlines, no applause.
The echoes finally died there, and in the quiet he met himself, not the myth, the man. The one who called me worthless learned what worth really costs. I did not gloat. I did not cheer. Markets do not care about victory laps. They care about outcomes and lessons. Elena and I finalized the divorce. We were civil. We were honest. We did not pretend it had not broken us. I wished her a life built on courage. She wished me peace I had already found. Sometimes survival is not pretty. Sometimes it is simply the truth paid in full. In time, the noise faded, and what remained was quiet and clear. Respect is not owed, it is earned, and when you spend it carelessly, it is gone. That was the lesson. For Robert, for Elena, for me. The past does not change. The future listens. And the man called worthless decided his value for himself, without permission, without apology. Just a signature withheld and a life reclaimed.
An office tucked in a strip mall near the airport. The man who lectured me about success now measured his days by traffic lights and exits. He commuted to anonymity, the same kind of space he once mocked. Elena never reached out, but friends said she moved to California. She took a post at a research institute, and the work fit her like a second skin. Papers published, stages taken. The voice she lost at home returned to the lab. She found her courage in data, even if she never found it in our marriage. I sold the Denver house and moved north to Portland. I opened a new Amberland office there, let the rain rinse the past from my sleeves. The Pacific Northwest hummed with builders, and I liked backing quiet giants. I never heard from Robert again, and I did not need to. The business journals did the talking, each headline another step down. Failed ventures, missed rounds, doors that stayed shut when he knocked. Investors passed on his decks, spooked by a history of pride over proof. He learned the chill of being dismissed, the sting of being ignored, the weight of being called worthless by people holding pen over ledger. Respect is not demanded or inherited. It is earned in the way you treat others, especially when you believe they have nothing to offer you. He had to learn that lesson the hard way. Sometimes, the cleanest revenge is letting character run its course. Consequences do not need help to arrive. And sometimes, the so-called worthless one is the only person in the room who understands what real power looks like.